The world of solo leveling had always been one of danger and mystery, where hunters, individuals blessed with supernatural abilities, fought against monstrous creatures that emerged from dimensional rifts. But for Sung Jinwoo, the weakest E-rank hunter, life had been a relentless struggle. His days were spent scraping by, barely surviving the lowest tier dungeons, mocked by his peers, and burdened by the responsibility of providing for his family. That was until fate intervened, granting him a power unlike anything the world had ever seen. Now, Jinwoo was no longer the helpless hunter he once was. He was the Shadow Monarch, a being capable of commanding an army of shadows and bending the very fabric of reality to his will. But even with his newfound strength, the world was far from safe. A new threat loomed, one that would test Jinwoo's limits and force him to confront the very hunters he once aspired to join. The story begins in the heart of Seoul, where the Hunter Association headquarters stood as a beacon of hope and power. Inside, the elite S-rank hunters gathered, their presence alone enough to inspire awe and fear. Among them was Cha Hae-in, the Sword Saint, her silver blade gleaming with an otherworldly light. Her piercing gaze scanned the room, her mind focused on the growing unrest among the hunter community. Rumors had spread of a rogue force targeting hunters, their motives unknown but their methods brutal. Hae-in's instincts told her this was no ordinary threat. Meanwhile, Thomas Andre, the guild master of the Scavenger Guild and one of the strongest S-rank hunters, leaned against a wall, his massive frame exuding an aura of raw power. His fists, capable of shattering mountains, clenched as he listened to the reports. "These bastards are picking us off one by one," he growled, his voice a low rumble. "We need to find them and crush them before they get any bolder." Jinwoo, however, was not among them. He stood atop a skyscraper, the city sprawling beneath him like a glittering sea. His shadow stretched long and dark, a testament to the power coursing through his veins. His eyes, once filled with uncertainty, now burned with a cold, calculating intensity. He had been tracking the rogue hunters for weeks, their trail leading him to this moment. These were no ordinary foes. They were hunters who had turned against their own, their abilities honed to perfection through years of combat. Jinwoo's senses tingled as he felt their presence nearby. "They're here," he muttered, his voice calm but laced with anticipation. His shadow soldiers materialized around him, their forms shifting and writhing like living darkness. They were an extension of his will, each one a formidable warrior in its own right. The first attack came without warning. A blade of pure energy sliced through the air, aimed directly at Jinwoo's throat. He sidestepped with inhuman speed, the attack grazing his shadow armor. His assailant, a rogue hunter clad in black, lunged forward, his movements a blur. Jinwoo countered with a swift kick, the force of his strike sending the hunter crashing into a nearby wall. But the fight was far from over. More rogues emerged, their abilities as diverse as they were deadly. One wielded flames that burned hotter than the sun, while another manipulated gravity itself, crushing everything in their path. Jinwoo's shadow soldiers surged forward, engaging the rogues in a chaotic dance of destruction. The air crackled with energy as attacks collided, the ground trembling beneath the sheer force of their power. Jinwoo's focus remained unwavering. He moved like a phantom, his movements precise and deadly. His daggers, forged from the essence of shadows, cut through the air with lethal precision. One rogue, a telekinetic, attempted to immobilize him, but Jinwoo's strength shattered the invisible bonds. He closed the distance in an instant, his blade piercing the hunter's chest. The rogue gasped, their eyes wide with disbelief, before collapsing to the ground. Another rogue, a master of illusions, tried to disorient him, but Jinwoo's heightened senses saw through the deception. He countered with a devastating punch, the impact sending shockwaves through the air. The rogue's illusion shattered like glass, revealing their true form. As the battle raged on, Jinwoo's shadow soldiers proved to be an unstoppable force. They moved in perfect unison, their attacks coordinated and relentless. One shadow, a towering knight clad in obsidian armor, cleaved through a rogue's defenses with a single swing of its massive sword. Another, a nimble assassin, darted between enemies, its daggers finding their mark with deadly accuracy. The rogues fought valiantly, but they were no match for Jinwoo's overwhelming power. One by one, they fell, their bodies dissolving into shadows that were absorbed by Jinwoo's army. But the fight was far from over. The leader of the rogue hunters, a figure shrouded in darkness, stepped forward. Their presence was suffocating, their power on par with Jinwoo's. "You've grown strong, Sung Jinwoo," the leader said, their voice a chilling whisper. "But strength alone won't save you." Jinwoo's eyes narrowed as he studied his opponent. This was no ordinary hunter. Their abilities were unlike anything he had encountered before. The leader raised a hand, and the very fabric of reality seemed to warp around them. Jinwoo felt a surge of energy as the leader unleashed their full power, the ground beneath them cracking and splintering. The clash that followed was nothing short of apocalyptic. Jinwoo's daggers clashed against the leader's shadowy blade, each strike sending shockwaves through the air. The leader's attacks were relentless, their movements a blur of speed and precision. Jinwoo countered with equal ferocity, his shadow soldiers joining the fray. The knight delivered a crushing blow, but the leader dodged with ease, retaliating with a blast of dark energy that sent the shadow flying. The assassin lunged from the shadows, but the leader's reflexes were too fast, their blade slicing through the shadow's form. Jinwoo gritted his teeth, his mind racing. He needed to end this, and fast. Summoning all his strength, Jinwoo unleashed a devastating attack. His shadow soldiers merged into a single, colossal entity, its form towering over the battlefield. The leader's eyes widened as the shadow brought its massive fist down, the impact shaking the very foundations of the city. But the leader was not defeated. With a roar, they unleashed a wave of darkness, the force of it pushing Jinwoo back. The two stood locked in a deadly stalemate, their powers clashing in a blinding explosion of light and shadow. As the dust settled, Jinwoo knew this was only the beginning. The rogue hunters were a formidable foe, and their leader was a threat unlike any he had faced before. But Jinwoo was no longer the weak hunter he once was. He was the Shadow Monarch, and he would stop at nothing to protect the world he loved. The battle had just begun, and the stakes had never been higher. Jinwoo hunts the hunters. Solo Leveling Twist, Part 2, plunges into the heart of the conflict as Jinwoo, now fully embracing his role as the Shadow Monarch, faces off against a cadre of elite hunters who have turned against him. The air crackles with tension as the battlefield becomes a chaotic tapestry of clashing weapons, erupting shadows, and bursts of elemental energy. Jinwoo stands at the center of it all, his cold, calculating gaze scanning his enemies as they circle him, their movements sharp and deliberate. These hunters are no ordinary foes, they are S-rank veterans, each wielding unique abilities honed through years of combat. But Jinwoo is no longer the weak hunter they once underestimated. He is a force of nature, a predator among prey, and tonight, he will remind them why they should fear the shadows. The first to strike is Kale, a lightning-based hunter whose speed is unmatched. He lunges at Jinwoo with blinding speed, his blade crackling with electricity as it arcs toward Jinwoo's throat. But Jinwoo doesn't flinch. With a flick of his wrist, a shadow soldier materializes in front of him, taking the brunt of the attack. The soldier dissipates into smoke, but Jinwoo is already moving, his body a blur as he closes the distance between himself and Kale. Kale barely has time to react before Jinwoo's dagger slashes through the air, forcing him to leap backward. Kale's eyes widen as he realizes Jinwoo's speed has surpassed his own. Impossible, Kale mutters, but Jinwoo doesn't give him time to process. He presses the attack, his movements fluid and precise, each strike forcing Kale to retreat further. Meanwhile, Lyra, a master of ice magic, conjures a massive glacier to trap Jinwoo. The ground trembles as jagged spikes of ice erupt around him, threatening to impale him from all sides. Jinwoo smirks, his shadow swirling around him like a living shield. With a thought, he commands his shadow soldiers to counterattack. Dozens of shadowy figures surge forward, their weapons gleaming as they clash against the ice. Lyra grits her teeth, her mana reserves depleting rapidly as she struggles to maintain her spells. "You're just one man," she shouts, but Jinwoo's voice cuts through the chaos like a blade. "One man is all it takes," he replies, his tone icy and unyielding. With a burst of dark energy, he shatters the glacier, sending shards of ice flying in all directions. Lyra stumbles, her defenses crumbling as Jinwoo's shadows close in. The battle intensifies as more hunters join the fray. Riker, a berserker with unparalleled strength, charges at Jinwoo with a roar, his massive axe cleaving through the air. Jinwoo meets him head-on, his dagger clashing against the axe with a resounding clang. The force of the impact sends shockwaves rippling through the battlefield, but Jinwoo doesn't falter. He channels his mana into his weapon, the blade glowing with an ominous black light. With a swift motion, he disarms Riker, sending the axe flying. Riker snarls, his fists clenched as he prepares to fight barehanded, but Jinwoo is already one step ahead. He summons a shadow soldier to restrain Riker, binding him in chains of darkness. "You're strong," Jinwoo admits, his voice calm, "but strength alone won't save you." As the fight rages on, Jinwoo's enemies begin to realize the true extent of his power. He isn't just a hunter, he is a strategist, a tactician who anticipates their every move. His shadow soldiers move with military precision, flanking the hunters and disrupting their formations. Jinwoo himself is a whirlwind of destruction, his movements a blend of grace and brutality. He adapts to each opponent's fighting style, countering their attacks with ease. Kale's lightning is met with shadow-infused armor, Lyra's ice is shattered by bursts of dark energy, and Riker's raw strength is outmatched by Jinwoo's superior technique. The hunters are pushed to their limits, their bodies battered and their resolve wavering. But Jinwoo isn't done yet. He knows the hunters still have one last card to play. From the shadows emerges their leader, a mysterious figure known only as the Warden. Clad in armor that seems to absorb light, the Warden wields a massive scythe that hums with deadly energy. "You've come far, Jinwoo," the Warden says, his voice echoing with an otherworldly resonance. "But this is where your journey ends." Jinwoo narrows his eyes, sensing the immense power radiating from the Warden. This is no ordinary hunter, this is someone who has transcended the limits of humanity, much like himself. The Warden attacks without warning, his scythe slicing through the air with terrifying speed. Jinwoo barely manages to dodge, the blade grazing his cheek. He retaliates with a flurry of strikes, but the Warden's armor deflects them effortlessly. The battle between Jinwoo and the Warden becomes a clash of titans, each blow shaking the very earth. Jinwoo's shadows surge forward, but the Warden's scythe cuts through them like paper. Desperation creeps into Jinwoo's mind as he realizes he's facing an opponent who can match him blow for blow. But then, something shifts. Jinwoo feels a surge of power within him, a well of energy he hasn't tapped into before. His eyes glow with an intense light as he channels this newfound strength into his attacks. The Warden falters, his armor cracking under the force of Jinwoo's strikes. "You've been holding back," the Warden growls, his voice tinged with frustration. Jinwoo doesn't respond. He doesn't need to. With a final, devastating blow, he shatters the Warden's scythe and sends him crashing to the ground. The battlefield falls silent as the hunters stare in disbelief. Jinwoo stands tall, his shadow swirling around him like a living storm. He looks down at the Warden, his expression unreadable. "This is the power of the Shadow Monarch," he says, his voice carrying the weight of his authority. The Warden coughs, blood staining his lips as he struggles to rise. "You've won," he admits, his voice barely a whisper. But this war is far from over. Jinwoo doesn't respond. He turns away, his shadow soldiers following him as he disappears into the darkness. The hunters are left broken and defeated, their pride shattered along with their weapons. Jinwoo has proven once again that he is a force to be reckoned with, a hunter who hunts the hunters. And as he walks away, the shadows seem to whisper his name, a reminder that the true battle has only just begun. The air crackled with tension as Jinwoo stood at the center of the battlefield, his shadow soldiers arrayed around him like a living fortress. The hunters, once his adversaries, now faced him as desperate challengers, their faces etched with fear and determination. The final battle had arrived, and the fate of the universe hung in the balance. The sky above was a swirling maelstrom of dark energy, the remnants of the system's collapse tearing at the fabric of reality. Jinwoo's eyes glowed with an otherworldly light, his power surging to its absolute peak. He had come too far to falter now. The hunters, led by the once mighty Thomas Andre, charged forward, their weapons blazing with energy. Jinwoo moved like a phantom, his movements a blur of precision and ferocity. He dodged a massive hammer swing from Andre, the ground shattering where the blow landed, and countered with a devastating punch that sent the S-rank hunter flying. Andre crashed into a distant wall, his armor cracking under the force, but he roared and surged back into the fray. The other hunters unleashed their skills in a coordinated assault, but Jinwoo's shadow soldiers intercepted them, their forms shifting and merging to counter every attack. The battlefield became a chaotic symphony of clashing steel, erupting flames, and shattering earth. Jinwoo's heart pounded as he pushed himself beyond his limits, his body straining under the immense power he wielded. He could feel the system's remnants trying to reclaim him, its voice whispering in his mind, urging him to surrender. But Jinwoo refused. He was no longer a pawn in someone else's game. He was the player, the hunter, the king. As the battle raged, Jinwoo's shadow soldiers began to falter, their forms flickering as the system's collapse destabilized their existence. The hunters seized the opportunity, pressing their advantage with renewed vigor. Jinwoo gritted his teeth, his mind racing. He couldn't afford to lose now. With a roar, he unleashed his ultimate skill, ruler's authority, a wave of dark energy that swept across the battlefield, freezing the hunters in place. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. Jinwoo's breath came in ragged gasps as he surveyed the scene. The hunters were immobilized, their expressions a mix of shock and defiance. He knew this was his chance to end it, to claim victory once and for all. But as he raised his hand to deliver the final blow, a voice echoed in his mind, a voice that wasn't his own. It was the voice of the Shadow Monarch, the being who had once controlled him. "You have come far, Jinwoo," the voice said, its tone both proud and sorrowful. "But this is not the way." True power lies not in domination, but in understanding. Jinwoo hesitated, his hand trembling. He thought of all he had sacrificed, all he had endured to reach this moment. He thought of his mother, his sister, his comrades who had fought and died beside him. And he realized that the Shadow Monarch was right. This wasn't about destroying his enemies. It was about forging a new path, a future where humanity could thrive without fear. With a deep breath, Jinwoo lowered his hand. The dark energy surrounding him dissipated, and the hunters were released from their paralysis. They stared at him in confusion, their weapons still raised but their resolve wavering. Jinwoo stepped forward, his voice calm but commanding. "This ends now," he said. "The system is gone. The chains that bound us are broken. We don't have to fight anymore." Thomas Andre lowered his hammer, his expression unreadable. The other hunters followed suit, their eyes filled with a mix of relief and disbelief. The battlefield fell silent, the only sound the distant rumble of collapsing dimensions. Jinwoo turned to face the swirling vortex above, the remnants of the system's power still threatening to consume everything. He knew what he had to do. Summoning every ounce of his strength, Jinwoo reached out with his mind, his shadow soldiers merging with him in a final, desperate act. Together, they channeled their energy into the vortex, stabilizing it and sealing the rift. The sky cleared, the dark energy dissipating into nothingness. The universe was saved, but the cost was immense. Jinwoo collapsed to his knees, his body racked with pain. His shadow soldiers were gone, their forms scattered to the winds. He was alone, but he had done it. He had changed the course of history. The hunters approached him cautiously, their weapons now sheathed. Thomas Andre extended a hand, helping Jinwoo to his feet. There were no words, no grand speeches. Just a silent acknowledgement of what had been accomplished. In the aftermath, the world began to heal. The gates that had once brought monsters into the human realm were sealed forever. The hunters, no longer bound by the system's rules, found new purpose in rebuilding what had been lost. Jinwoo, now a legend, retreated from the spotlight, choosing to live a quiet life with his family. But his actions had set a new precedent. The balance of power had shifted, and humanity was no longer at the mercy of unseen forces. The future was uncertain, but it was theirs to shape. And as Jinwoo looked out over the horizon, he knew that the true battle had only just begun. The fight for a better world, one where everyone could rise above their limits and achieve their potential, was a battle worth fighting. And he would be ready, no matter what challenges lay ahead.